Hello everyone, so this is Andrew with Andrew Peche Photography, and we are going to be talking about which light to choose for real estate photography today. And I know a lot of you are kind of getting into this, and I know a lot of you already kind of know what we're doing, so we're going to try and, cover all the bases here and just get it so everyone's understanding, what they should choose or what they should be getting into, okay? I'm going to keep this simple, and my way of doing that is just discuss the lights that I recommend. Okay, so anything I don't discuss, I sort of recommend the ones that I'm discussing more. Okay, so if I don't talk about it, I'm kind of saying go another way. All right, and a point I want to make is kind of the point I made in the last video I made is, don't get fooled into this notion that the more money you spend on your flash is like going to make your images better somehow, okay? Especially us, because we're usually bouncing our flash, and that tends to even out color inconsistencies. So we're not really too concerned with little inconsistencies in color like other photographers might be, okay? So we really don't need to spend crazy amounts of money on our flashes to get, just perfectly acceptable results, all right? We're going to go into triggers as well, because I think that's probably one of the most important things about flashes, in my opinion, is how the trigger system integrates with the flashes, okay? And if the actual flashes have built-in triggers, that's a really important part of your decision-making process, all right? So I think triggering is so important, I'm going to talk about it first. Now, I have about 20 years experience with the off-camera flash, and I will tell you right now, I use really, really, really simple triggers. All my triggers do is they send a signal out to the flash and tell it to go off, okay? It's not that I don't know how to use through the lens triggers, or I don't know how to use all this stuff. I am just totally convinced that, when you're in the middle of a job and 3 people are asking you questions, and there's pillows that need fluffing, and there's literally like 20 things going on in your head. I just think that if you throw into the mix, like through the lens triggers or even triggers, I sort of kind of sway away from triggers that adjust power for your flashes. I like to just have really, really simple equipment. And if you'll notice, I just want to go into a kind of maybe a scary analogy here. I don't want to scare anybody, but if you notice, like Navy SEALs or like special forces people in the military, or a lot of police officers, they carry guns that are just totally, absolutely foolproof, like a Glock. Okay, you can throw it underwater; it's gonna fire. You can drop it out of a car; it's not gonna fire. So it's just perfectly simple piece of equipment. It fires when you pull the trigger, and it's really reliable and good about not firing if you're not pulling the trigger. And so I'm going to kind of call that the Glock requirement. Does your equipment satisfy the Glock requirement, or is it really, really simple, okay? And just always shoots when you want. That's why I use this analogy, because kind of shooting when you want, or does it, not shoot when you don't want? So you don't want misfires, you don't want anything like that, okay? So does your equipment satisfy that? Is it really reliable, all right? That's what these guys want. They're under pressure. Usually when you pull out a gun, you're under pressure, right? Kind of like us on the job. You don't ever want that not to work, ever, all right? That's just something else that you're going to have to be concentrating on. So we want our equipment to be really simple and reliable. So I've kind of narrowed it down to 2 systems. Yongnuo will be one system, and then the other one is Flashpoint. It's really simple. You just have to kind of choose one of these systems. And I would say the big advantage of the Flashpoint system is that you're going to be able to trigger your bigger monolights. They're going to have a built-in trigger, okay? Like for me, I use Yongnuos are my triggers on top of my camera, and so I can buy Yongnuo Speedlights, and they have built-in triggers, so I'm set there. But my Monolight is a Rove light, and I actually have to attach a triggering mechanism to it, which doesn't bug me too much at all, so I'm fine with it. But that's just the big advantage you'll have if you go Flashpoint, okay, which is their R2 family of lights, which we're going to discuss, okay? So just real quick, should I get through the lens flashes? No. Okay. So that's just what I think. You don't need that unless you need it for other work like some other work you do and you really know you need that, okay? But for me, especially if you're just getting started, you won't need through the lens flashes, okay? So save yourself a lot of money, and we don't need to talk about that too much more, except for the fact that this is also kind of in keeping with our Glock requirement, right? Where it's going to be as simple as possible, right? We don't want to have some little setting go wrong in one of our menus, and now we're on a job and like all our flashes don't work all of a sudden, right? And that's what through the lens can do for you, okay? Believe me. So it doesn't satisfy it for me. So I'm not a big fan of like the whole through the lens within your triggering systems. I'm not big on that stuff, all right? So we'll first talk about speedlights, and they are great little tools. They're great. You need to have a couple, at least one or two. But the first thing I'll say is just kind of forget the Nikon and Canon speedlights, or the really expensive speedlights. In other words, there's nothing they're really giving you an advantage at all right? In fact, I can even say in some cases they might be disadvantageous to have, especially if you drop one, it's a real pain. I mean, it's so much. If somebody can steal one, because they cost like $700-800, some of them. So just forget those, all right? It's just not worth the trouble, okay? So at this point in time, we're really lucky as photographers right now. This wasn't true 10, 15 years ago. It's all about Yongnuo, Flashpoint, and Godox for me. And you can kind of combine Godox and Flashpoint, because Flashpoint stuff is pretty much just Godox stuff, okay? So if that doesn't make sense to you, it's all right. But we'll talk about that maybe a little more later. But again, a big consideration is if the units have built-in triggers or not, okay? So you want to be looking for that information. You won't have to attach anything. You'll just have to put something on top of your camera and you're set, right? You won't have to attach anything to the light itself if it has a built-in trigger. That's very important. It kind of quickens up your work if you have that ability, okay? So just a quick discussion on the limitations of speedlights. So I want to go back in time a little bit and just kind of ask ourselves, what were speedlights designed for? They were designed to be put on top of a camera and shot right at, a people or a group of people that are right in front of the camera. That's not a lot of light. You know what I mean? That's just pretty easy amount of light that just, I just need to shoot this guy and he's standing in a little bit of shadow. I need to put a little light on him. So that's what speedlights are designed for. They're not designed to light like a huge living room or something, okay? Especially when you're bouncing, all right? Now, if you get 3 or 4 or 5 of them in a living room, even a big one, it usually does end up to be all right. You can work with it, but for me, that's not working, okay? And just in general, the point of this slide is just in general, speedlights are going to have a lot of limitations in terms of their power. And I would just say, my kind of conclusion on speedlights is it's good to have 1 or 2 of them just to, you have that ability. But the way I work, I hardly ever use speedlights because, like, even if I go into a small bedroom, I'm like on full power with my speedlights, the way I shoot. ISO 100 f8, it's like full power. I mean, I can barely get enough light in a small bedroom with one, all right? So we need more light than that. So what are we going to use? I also think that, people tend to kind of bump their ISOs up. I sort of don't agree with that. I know if you just bump your ISO a little bit up from your base ISO, you won't notice the noise too much, but you start bumping your noise up a little bit too far and you will notice. And I just feel like people buy these nice cameras and they try and stay up to date, but then they're bumping their ISO up and all they needed to do was put a little bit more light and stay at their base ISO. That's just how I feel, okay? So try and stay at your base ISO and use light as like your friend, all right? So let's just quickly talk about the monolights and some other lights that are coming on the market now. We're in a really good time here. So you have these 600 watt second choices that we're going to look into in a minute. And these are great. I mean, this is what I use. I couldn't live without it. It's going to really sort of expand your capabilities. And one day you're going to say, well, what if I shot a softbox through the the living room window, you know, and you're going to be able to do that, you know, with these other units, pretty much all the ones you can think of, you're not going to be able to do that, okay? What if I want to bounce, you know, like for instance, I've bounced my light, 600 watt second light, off of walls for exterior shots. You understand what I'm saying? Like I'm lighting up an exterior and I don't want the shadows to be so hard, and I'll bounce my flash off a white wall at full power outside, and it'll kind of fill in a little bit. So just, I mean, I'm not going to go, there's a million things I use my 600 watt second light at full power for almost every day. So I just think you're robbing yourself of all the creative and kind of artistic opportunities that it would give you if you don't have at least one. Okay, so that's my thought on those. And the reason 600 watt seconds is the number there is because we can't really get anything at this point that's 600 watt seconds and really, really portable like we can with a couple of these lights we have. So that's pretty much the top end for stuff that's really super, super portable and doesn't have a cable, okay? So we got cool little lights coming out like this Evolve 200, which is great. You know, it might be worth like 2 or 3 Speedlights worth of light. And, you know, these are cool little choices if you're, you know, arms are getting tired at the end of the day by carrying a 600 watt light, watt second light. You might want to look into stuff like this. Same with the Streak Light 360. I don't really use those because you kind of need a light stand, and I don't use light stands, but you know, these are cool lights as well. So let's jump in and check these out a little bit more closely. All right. Okay, so jumping back into the discussion, these are the triggers for the R2 family of lights with the Autorama Flashpoint brand. And this trigger right here will trigger, and you'll be able to control a huge family of lights just with this one trigger. All right, and it's only $45, and I think that's great. And the lights themselves will all have built-in triggers. Okay, so you're going to be fine there. So you could go ahead and get this trigger right here, and you're fine. You're going to be able to trigger any of the lights that we're going to look at in a second in the R2 family. Okay, same goes for this one. It's pretty much the same trigger. It just has a little bit different design. You can maybe see it a little better, you know, as you're looking at it. The other one might be a little bit harder to see. You might have to, you know, bend at your back and look at this. But this one obviously has the ability to attach a flash to it, okay, which I do think that's a good thing to be able to do sometimes, all right? So it would be nice to have that ability, okay? But these are great. Everything's great, and it does kind of satisfy my Glock requirement because you can put these into single pin mode, I guess. I don't have experience with them, but I found out you can put them in the single pin mode, and what that means is they're just sending out a signal to trigger the flashes, and that's it. No through the lens, no nothing, just a signal to trigger the flashes. And I like that. I might, if I had this, I might even put it in that mode. In fact, I would, I know for sure. Okay, so you'll have to look at the benefits and drawbacks of those two, and you can choose one if you choose this. But I would say, you know, if you're a little confused and you're not sure which system you should get into, I would say you can stop watching this video right now and choose this R2 Flashpoint system. It's great. So here's the R2 family of lights. So again, this is the lights that are going to have built-in receivers for these two triggers we just looked at. Okay, so they're all going to work seamlessly with these lights. So we have a 600 watt second light, which is great. We have a non through the lens version of that same light, which, you know, this is the one I would recommend you get. We don't need the through the lens, remember. We have the Streak Light, which it's not my favorite because it has that big battery pack, and that's just not the way I work, but a great light if you want to put it on a light stand and kind of do stuff that way. And we have these little flashes, and there's one that is even down to about $70, and I think that's a great price, okay, for the Speedlights. Okay, one of the Zoom, I forget which one, but I think these Zoom Lion ones are a little bit more expensive, okay? But again, if you're a little confused and you're not sure what to do, go ahead and research these a little more, and I highly, highly recommend this system overall. You just got to buy that remote, Maybe you want to be like me and put it into single pin where the remote is just sending out the signal to trigger the flash, and that's it, and you're set, okay? And the one light they sort of don't talk about down here because I think they're trying to update this page, maybe they haven't got it updated yet, is this one. This little guy is out now. And so he is a smaller, maybe like a brick-sized unit, and it's able to be controlled by those same R2 triggering units, okay? So that's what you're going to get if you decide to go this route with these R2 triggers. You're going to get all those ability to buy all those different types of flashes, and there's more than you could ever need in there. You got a 600 watt light, you got this guy, you got flash units, you got the streak light. I mean, it's a really well balanced and kind of prodigious selection you've got there, okay? There's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of good stuff, and it seems to be working really well for everyone that I've interacted with about it on all accounts, okay? So now, I'll jump into Yongnuo stuff, and there's a couple little drawbacks, but this is the trigger I personally use. It's kind of outdated, but it's called an RF602, and I just trigger my Yongnuo Speedlights. They have a built-in receiver for this trigger, right? And so if you wanted to go this route, I would recommend the RF603, which here it is. And this is just kind of the updated version of what I have. You'd put this on top of your camera. Maybe the Speedlights you buy, they'll have a built-in trigger, right? So they're just going to already have a built-in trigger, so you're set. You put this on top of your camera, and you buy this Speedlight, and it's already got a receiver built in, okay? So it's going to trigger that. And then the question would become, what if I want to have a bigger light, like one of those 600 watt monolights you're recommending? Well, like for me, I go ahead and I attach one of these to my monolight. And, it's not a big deal to me, but I'm fine with it. I just attach that every day. And it's a very, very reliable trigger. It satisfies my Glock requirement. It's very simple. It works every time. It goes through walls. When I'm under all that pressure on a job, it's not going to fail. It's working every day. And, I bought it almost 12, 13 years ago, and it's still working. All right. So this Yongnuo stuff, people call it cheap, but I mean, I don't know what better. It's working for the last 12 years. All right. So this is one of the options, again, of the flash units you could buy if you go with the Yongnuo system. They also have a YN564, which maybe that one's better. I'll let you look into that, but I buy these personally, and they're fine, and they're $60, okay? Not much, not much to talk about. They're great, and they work, and, they're cheap, and so I don't have to worry about dropping them and all that stuff. And I just a quick point here, I noticed when I look through here, maybe I'm just overlooking something, but I don't see that it says built-in radio receiver. So, for example, if you're ever having problems like figuring out some information, I think Flash Havoc at his blog, he's reviewing the same light I was just talking about, YN563, and the first sentence he has, the first manual speedlight with a radio trigger receiver built in. Okay, so he actually gives you the pertinent information. So he's really good about giving you the information about flashes that come out. He does it usually right when they come out. So I recommend this blog for just trying to figure out flashes in general. Okay, and just a quick note, I would recommend this transceiver as well, or transmitter. Although it's sort of kind of like, I don't know if you can put it in single pin mode or not. I don't think you can, but I have heard people that I know give good reports about this. So it sends out the signal, and you can also adjust the power of these guys, okay? So I have heard good reports about that. I just personally like to keep things a little bit more simple, okay? But, I'll let you kind of decide on that, all right? And just lastly here, I wanted to discuss just really quickly, they used to make a Rove light that I have. It's right here. It looks like this. And they stopped making it. I'm sure you could find them used or something. But this is the new one. And it's just, make sure you get the through the lens version. That's what we're looking at here. And they look great. They're just sort of being overshadowed by the R2 system, the Explore 600 at this point. So nobody's really looking at these, but I think, oh, they're not out yet. Okay, that's why. So you just have to pre-order it. So I didn't know that. All right. So, but we're probably going to be hearing more about this in the near future. All right. So I just had this up here just for something so you could keep in mind. Okay. So this is the new Rove light, which I highly recommend the Rove light. So we're going to have to find out how well this one holds up. Okay. And again, if you had a Yongnuo triggers, you would just, there's probably a sync port on here somewhere, and you would just have to plug those in. And let's see, you just have to plug in the triggers. Yeah, there's a 3.5 millimeter sync socket somewhere. Doesn't show it for some reason. And you just have to maybe Velcro your trigger onto the side there, your Yongnuo trigger. All right. All right, and that does it, guys. That is the flash systems and triggering mechanisms I recommend. I know I was talking fast and stuff, but I think I got it all in there. But please feel free to comment down below if I missed something or if you have a question, and I'd appreciate that. I'll try and get back to you. And thanks again for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.